Is this the little girl I carried? Is this the little boy at play? When did she get to be a beauty? When did he grow to be so tall? Wasn't it yesterday when they were small? Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly flow the days. Seedlings turn overnight to sunflowers, blossoming even as we gaze. Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly fly the years, one season following another, laden with happiness and tears. What words of wisdom can I give them? How can I help to ease their way?
This evening with grateful hearts because of all that you have done for us. Lord, we cannot really begin to enumerate those things. But Lord, we come tonight thankful for your salvation, thankful for your love, your care for us, and we're thankful for how you work in lives. Lord, tonight, as we hear testimony of your work in Asenath's life and that of her family, Lord, even now we rejoice in your goodness and your working, your guiding, your leading, your care through many trials. And so tonight, Lord, as we prepare to hear this program, would you prepare our hearts? Prepare our hearts to receive these testimonies and to give glory to you and to rejoice with Asenath. Lord, I also want to commit this evening to you as a time of thankfulness for the years of ministry that Asenath has had here in Metro Manila, and especially at Bob Jones Memorial Bible College, and in so many other ways also, Lord. And so we are thankful for that tonight, and we want to express our gratitude to you for that. Lord, we ask that you would work in us tonight. Each of us comes to this program with different needs, different place in our walk with you, different challenges, different victories, different disappointments and discouragements. Lord, each of us comes tonight needing something from you. And I pray, Lord, that we would have ears to hear what you would say to each of us tonight. So, Lord, we commit this performance to you and pray that you would be glorified in all that is done. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen. Please remain standing.
Sa fundraising, my siblings are doing their own fundraising and saving up in their own way. But tonight, I am so pleased to be able to sing for my dad. And I would like for you to get to know our family a little bit better, and for you to understand how important he was and how special he was and what a blessing he was to me and my family. You would need to understand where I came from, the background that I had before the Lord brought this Danny boy into our life. And so we're going to have maybe 14 minutes of video time, and you'll see on the screen a video of my testimony, and you'll see how the Lord brought 3 separate families together to make them into one family.
I was born in 1978. My tatay, Fructuoso Abad, was a pastor. He and my nanay, Josephine, lived a life of extreme poverty. I was the 4th child, and hard work was necessary for us to survive. Nanay talked about working on a farm shortly after I was born. She would lay me down on the ground beside her as she dug potatoes out of a field. Even before I was 2, my family experienced great loss and tragedy. My parents had major health problems, and my sisters and I were extremely malnourished. One day, we lost our home in a fire. Manang Joy, who was barely 6 years old, pulled me and my sisters out to safety. Years later, I would come to realize how great that loss had been for my family. I was in my late teens when I learned that I actually had a baby brother who died in that fire. He was a newborn. It was devastating, especially for Nanay, and she never stopped grieving for the little one. Almost immediately after, another crisis came when my 5-year-old sister Susie and I became seriously ill at the same time. Hospitals back then would not accept more than one member from the same family, and so we became separated. I was admitted in one hospital and Susie was in another. My parents took turns going back and forth to us. But no parent was in the room when Susie died. She grew stiff and cold in the arms of her sisters, 6-year-old Joy and 4-year-old Dolly. And they sat holding her all day till a family friend discovered them. To this day, I grieve for them, for the innocence that was lost. I grieve for the adult load they had to carry too early. Susie was laid to rest, and life would not be the same. Nanay became a broken woman, and in a sense, our family became broken too. My sisters and I were passed around to different relatives. Sometimes we found kindness, many times we did not. At this point, the story is pretty dark, but there's a verse in Isaiah 65:24 where God says, "And it shall come to pass that before they will call, I will answer. And while they are yet speaking, I will hear." This is exactly what God did for us. Even before the need was pressing or made obvious, the Lord was already preparing the answer. On the very day that I was born, June 13, 1978, a single missionary, Edna Giuliano, was making her way from Florida, USA, to the Philippines. After 2 years in Manila, she felt the Lord calling her to Mindanao, where she joined the ministry of Pastor Faustino and Virgie Espinas. A wedding brought Miss Giuliano to the church where my family was given a place to stay. While wedding activities were taking place, she saw Nanay's condition and observed Tatay's struggle to care for his family. That same day, she saw me in a field and came to me. I was sitting in my filth, half naked, burning up with fever. She knew what she had to do. She found my father and told him that she was taking me home with her, and my sister Dolly was coming too. And she was taking care of us so that he could care for his wife, and when all was back to normal, he could come for us and bring us home. He knew where she lived, and so he agreed to let us go. The missionary had no idea there was another sister out there, but when she heard our eldest was in a neighboring town, no time was lost in reuniting us. Our manang Joy brought joy and smiles to our faces. We began to grow healthy together, and we even began going to school. This was the start of a very different life. The hope that the Abad family would one day be whole was not to be. In about a year's time, Nanay died, being only 28 years old. Tatay was battling advanced tuberculosis. He knew he could not give us the future he wanted, and that made him decide to give us up for adoption. His letters to Miss Giuliano describe the pain involved in the decision. He wrote beautifully, despite having only a second-grade education. During World War II, American missionaries taught him English, and his letters continue to be one of my best treasures. Tatay had only 3 requests. First, do not split the girls up. Anyone adopting us needed to take us all. And then secondly, make the younger maintain Filipino respect by using the titles Mana or Ate. And then lastly, he asked for the Abad name to be kept in our names, as that was the only thing he could give us. All these 3 requests were honored. Tatay passed away during my first trip to the States, just as I turned 4, and only 10 months after losing Nanay. I think the heartache of losing his beloved wife and children were just too much for his tender heart. Earth no longer held any joys for him, and he longed to be with the Lord. I was brought to the States to meet a family who was interested in adopting me and my sisters. My sisters could not come with me because the U.S. government would not allow it. The couple in Iowa admitted that they loved me and wanted all of us, but they did not have peace about breaking the love ties that had already developed with Miss Giuliano. The unexpected turn of events brought Mommy great joy. On our return to the Philippines, the process for legal adoption was started and became complete when I was 6. The Lord used my adoption story to help me understand the similar and even greater blessings I received spiritually as a member of God's family. Before adoption, I was physically needy, helpless, and sick. Spiritually, I was no different. God's word in Isaiah 1:4-6 addresses people who are far from God. Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, the whole head is sick, and the whole heart faint. From the sole of the foot even unto the head there is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and putrefying sores. Physically, I was dirty and unlovely. Spiritually, I was as Isaiah 65:6 says, "But we are all as an unclean thing, and all our righteousness are as filthy rags." Miss Giuliano showed love to me when others would have shunned me because of my sickness and filth. In the same way, Christ showed his love to me while I was an undeserving, rebellious sinner. Romans 5:8 says, "But God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." What a blessing to know that just as I became a legal member of a loving family through a Philippine court case, God gives me the opportunity to be his child as well. John 1:12 is one of my favorite verses. "But as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name." After graduating from college in the States, I had the special privilege of visiting my parents' graves and laying down proper markers. After taking a few moments to grieve and joyfully remember them, I sang a special song that's always been dear to my heart.
May 10th, 1982, addressed to Ms. Giuliano. And he wrote it while he was in Bukidnon, and Ms. Giuliano, my mom, was here, still in Quezon City at that time. I'm going to skip to a certain portion. And he is replying to a letter that she sent him. And so he says here, "Being recipient and thankful to you for the letter that she sent, I shed tears of joy and approval, and thinking that my letter of reply might reach you there, yet before you and love that kindly, people you kindly, love that kindly, leave for the States. So being lonely and homesick for you with our children, I sacrificially wrote you. We left Project 6 for Manila April 7 in the morning." And he's talking about this exact church, Project 6. This is why I feel that there's such a beautiful connection by the Lord led me here to have this council. So he left Project 6, April 27. And when we reached here and got into ship, I began to feel lonely, being homesick for all of you. I thought, I am leaving for Manila. You and Lava kindly will be leaving for the States on May 20. Nenning, Joya, and me and Dali will be left in Manila. I was emotionally out of control and could not hold my tears from coming out of my eyes and rolling down my hard for me to allow them to be separated far away from me. But because of their future, through you being laid ahead of them, I allow myself to suffer for loneliness and homesick for them. Someone defined life. He said, life is a continuous adjustment, which is filled with thorns and roses from the cradle to the grave. I believe it is true. Now to me, life is being filled with thorns. The absence of my second daughter and her lover to be with the Lord, and the separating of our 3 daughters very far away from me are the thorns in my life. But their blissful tomorrow, through God's use of you on the other hand, is a rose in my life. So I am much thankful to you and how I praise the Lord. And he signs it sincerely in Christ, Pastor Profuso. I know that the pain of separation for him was great, and it was a sacrifice for him to let go of us. How he longed to keep us with him. And yet I know that while he was struggling and he was hurting and asking the Lord for grace, I know that he found comfort and solace in his Heavenly Father, who gave him exactly what he needed. And I know that my father was trusting that same Heavenly Father to take care of me and my older sisters. So with joy, I would like to sing this song. I remember standing beside the graves. It was such an emotional experience. Sing and just thank the Lord for what he had done in the life.
Not too long after the adoption, my mom started to feel anxious about raising 3 girls alone. Around the same time, a tall, dark, and handsome young man was starting to show interest. His name was Daniel Cadavos. Dan was the brother of Virgie Espinas, the wife of the pastor my mom worked with when she made the move to Mindanao. The visits were not highly encouraged at first. Although there was a recent change in Dan's life, my mom remembered going to the Cadavos home for holidays and seeing Danny with unsaved friends, living a life that was far from the Lord. His story is one of transformation and God's power to change a person. Danny was born to a family of 10 children. His parents, Ricardo and Lolita Cadavos, were Roman Catholic. One day, a missionary spoke to Ricardo about the relationship with God that comes through faith in Christ alone, and he and his wife chose to become members of God's family, just like John 1:12 says. The family felt like they were poor, but they owned a great deal of land and worked it. Danny remembers his father waking him up early in the morning and sending him out with their carabao to find pasture. It was so early in the morning that he would often fall asleep on the back of the animal and feel the warmth of the rising sun as he struggled to complete his chore. When he was about 10, he sold polar bear popsicles, walking long distances in only flip-flops to help his family bring in added income. He was taught to tithe with his earnings, and he did it faithfully. The Cadavos family loved to share their home and often housed visiting preachers. A deep admiration for preachers prompted Danny to decide he would be a pastor one day. However, when he became a teenager, Daniel saw the struggle of pastors to survive and care for their families. Sometimes these men didn't have food to eat. Profoundly impacted by this, he decided he was going to study agriculture and make money instead, forget about being a pastor. His college days took him far from the Lord, and as he put it, his life was a mess. He enjoyed some power and popularity as president of APO at Central Mindanao University. He also became successful in work, eventually becoming a manager at a booming piggery farm in Cagayan de Oro. Working with pigs, Dan often felt God speaking to him about his wayward life. He was a prodigal son, just like the one in Luke 15. God used 2 accidents to get his attention and remind him of his promise to live for God. The second accident was a motorcycle crash which split his helmet in 2. His life was spared a second time, and he knew that if he persisted in his own way, there may not be a third chance. It was then that Dan made the commitment to leave his secular work and train for full-time ministry. The more Dan became sure of his calling, the more he determined to choose his life partner carefully. Fast forward now to year 2019. Just this January, while we were riding home from a church event, I asked him why he chose my mom 31 years ago. He said the decision wasn't based on feelings. He saw her faithfully serving the Lord, and he knew that was what he needed. He saw that she needed a husband to care for her, and my sisters and I needed a good father. On March 6, 1987, he received an instant family, and later on the Lord blessed by giving them 3 more children, for a total of 6. After 30+ years of faithful care toward his family, I'm still thanking the Lord for this incredible man he brought into our lives. And so, this is my story, the story that God has chosen to give to me. And the songs that follow, they remind us that life is good, life is precious, and life is beautiful when lived God's way and when it is given back to God.
Actually, I was there when they courted. Most children are not able to see when their parents were courting. I was there. And actually, I spied on them. There were times where my dad, when they were married yet, he would come visit in the home, and they would have, their time in the sala, and they would send us upstairs. And so, after a while, we would try to peek and see what was going on downstairs. And sometimes, like if this was the steps, our heads would be upside down, and also in sickness and in health. And I've seen my dad sick, and my mom take care of him. And just more recently, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and a very aggressive kind. Actually, she has 3 different kinds of cancer in her body. And it's been a blessing to me to see my dad care for her in such a way. They're always together. So I think of them when I sing these songs. So I'm going to ask for May to come and join me. I'll be singing.
Battery. Mamaya, atakin mo na.
Deeply
You're doing it again. Singing with yourself.
Well, it's been a long time since we did it last. 31 years ago.
That's right. And remember, we used to use cassette tapes and cassette recorders?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's time to do it again. Shall we?
Absolutely.
May
what we would call a soul winner. He loves to talk to people about the Lord, and I think he's gifted with that. He's able to carry on short conversations and get straight to the point and ask people about their spiritual life. One of my favorite soul winning stories that my dad shared with me involves him visiting this very poor area in Bukidnon. And he had a companion with him, and they went to this little tiny house, and they knocked on the door. And they were there for a while, and they kept calling, and no one seemed to be home. But before they turned to leave, they heard that there was like some commotion in the back, and it sounded like someone was cutting wood. And so they went to the back, and sure enough, there was this older lady who was chopping wood. And so they called out to her, and they kept saying, "Hello, hello." She did not respond to them. And as they got closer to her, they realized that she was actually deaf, like severely deaf. And when they got near, one of them tapped her on the shoulder, and she was so startled because she never heard them coming at all. And so my dad tried to get her attention, and he was explaining why they were there, and he was introducing himself, and he said that my name is Pastor, and she thought that he was saying his name was Nestor, and they just were not communicating well at all. And my dad was so burdened for her because he was thinking that here's this poor woman, and I'm here to share the gospel with her and share with her the news that God loves her and is providing a way to have eternal life, and she's not able to hear it. And he was just so burdened by that. So he prayed, and he said, "God, if it be possible, just one last time, give this woman ears to hear your word." And so he explained the plan of salvation, how that we are all sinners, and that because we are sinners, the payment for our sin is death, which is actually separation from God and in hell for eternity. And then he shared with her the good news, how God loved her so much that God sent his only son to die in her place so that she could have eternal life. And so they were coming to the very end of their discussion, and he was trying to ask her to make a decision. And he said, if you heard what I said, and if you agree with the things that I shared with you, if you understand, he said, I want you to follow me in prayer. I want you to join me in prayer. And he said, I'm going to start first, and you can just repeat after me if your heart is in agreement. And so he said, "Dear Lord," and well, of course this is in our tongue, okay? So in our dialect, he says, "Dear Lord," and she said, "Dear Lord." And he said, "I know that I am a sinner." And she said, "I know that I am a sinner," perfectly. There was nothing odd about it. It was perfectly exactly what he said. And she accepted the Lord that day. And after they ended their prayer, my dad tried to communicate with her some more, talk to her some more, and she could not hear him anymore. She was deaf again, like severely deaf. And it was amazing that God would do that miracle for a short time, just to allow someone to have an opportunity to hear the gospel. And so the next song I'm going to sing is "My Father Watches Over Me." There's a phrase in the second verse that I really love. It says that He makes the rose an object of His care. And He cares for His creation, how much more the people for whom He died. I trust in God wherever I may be. trust in God. I know He cares for me. On mountain bleak or on the stormy sea, though billows roll, He keeps my soul. My Heavenly Father watches over me. He makes the rose an object of His care. He guides the eagle through the pathless air, and surely He remembers me. My Heavenly Father watches over me. I trust in God. I know He cares for me. On mountain bleak or on the stormy sea, though billows roll, He keeps my soul. My Heavenly Father watches over me. My Heavenly Father watches over me.
I'm going to read most of what I want to share at this point because it's a little bit easier for me. It's quite emotional. I think one of the biggest struggles that I've had, and something that I really needed to take to the Lord and ask for His grace was dealing with my mom's cancer and finding out that my beautiful mom, who has been serving the Lord for over 40 years, was stricken with a very aggressive kind of cancer that kind of morphed into three very horrible, very aggressive, very sinister kinds. And actually tonight, they would want to be here with me tonight and to support, but they left home just this morning so that they could continue her cancer treatments in school. So they're actually, I'm pretty sure that they are probably connected with me now and watching through Facebook. And so I guess one of the main questions that was just a very honest question for me was, why is my mom suffering with three kinds of aggressive cancer after serving the Lord faithfully for 40 years? And honestly, I didn't see how that was loving. How can that be something loving coming from the Lord? And almost immediately, I'm just being very transparent and honest in my struggle, almost immediately I connected this situation to Christ's suffering. That's the reason why. God bruised His Son so that I might have life and a relationship with Him forever. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, "For He made Him, Christ, who knew no sin, He was perfect, to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in Him." And Isaiah 53:3-11 describes how Christ was tortured and bruised. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon Him. And with His stripes we are healed. He was oppressed and He was afflicted, yet He opened not His mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter. And so I'm skipping over, but this really shares the suffering that Christ went through for our sake. And so the phrase "smitten by God," that really impacted me, and I really realized that this is what was going on as well. Smitten by God in order to bring many to God. I was speechless really after realizing this. I knew I couldn't argue with the Lord. And I knew that even though it was hard to understand, this was the way a just God showed love. I decided to cling to the Lord and to trust Him with what He was doing in the life of my mom. He was changing her and changing my entire family by the cancer that we were dealing with. He was also making her an amazing testimony to others. She was telling her doctors, nurses, fellow patients, neighbors, how good and loving God was. And my dad had countless opportunities to win taxi drivers and so many others to the Lord, all because of this horrible, ugly cancer. God was smiting a dear one to show He was real to others who desperately needed Him. There were so many people that they met who had cancer too, and they didn't have any hope. And through my mom's testimony, she was able to share how there is hope. There is hope. And at the same time, while the Lord was smiting her with this disease, He was also giving my mom amazing strength, which baffled doctors. They were so surprised to see how strong she was and to know that she has been stage 4 cancer for 3 years. It's not that long. And He was making her pain bearable with only ibuprofen. When specialists were thinking that she should be on strong meds like morphine. By now, they were saying, with what they saw in her scan and in the medical reports, she should really be on morphine, but she's only taking ibuprofen for that. Only the Lord can do that. The provision that they have been given has been equally astounding. It's been amazing. I've heard how much they were gifted, and it just really amazes me how the Lord provided for them. And so my heart is full. It's just full with His goodness. And so tonight, in the face of cancer and heartache, I am choosing to sing with full confidence about the gifts that God gives to me.
To the
I would like to cut the next song. Rising on the third day from the grave. And so because of that, he's able to save us to the uttermost. Okay, so we're going to end with this one. We might have one more song after this, but this is a very special song. So.
Is this the little girl I carry? Is this the little boy I play?
I don't remember growing older than
When did he get to be on you? When did he grow to be so tall? Was it yesterday when they were small? Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly float our days. Seasons turn overnight to sunflowers, blossoming even as we gaze. Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly fly our years. One season following another, laden with happiness and tears. What words of wisdom can I give them? How can I help to ease their way?
Lord, we must live for one another, day by day. They look so natural together.
Just like two newlyweds should be.
Is there a canopy in store for me?
Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly flow our days. Seedlings turn overnight to sunflowers, blossoming even as we gaze. Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly fly our years. One season following another, laden with happiness and tears.
So for those of you who didn't know, I will sing the first stanza and the chorus, and then I would like for you to join in the second. I'd like to sing this one. Would you need? So we'll sing together for the last piece. Blessed assurance, Jesus have some students who have exams tomorrow. So my teacher's heart is very sensitive, and I do want to be thoughtful of you. I do want to take this time to say thank you. Yes, I probably need all of it. It's been a blessing to be here tonight. I want to, first of all, thank First Baptist Church of Manila and Project 6 for housing us, for adopting this event. It's a blessing to be here and to be able to have this concert in honor of my dad. Thank you. I also want to help the many people who helped me put this concert together. Pastor Mike has been a great help and amazing setup. The videos that you saw, the music coming together. So thank you. And I want to thank my performers who made music with me tonight. It's a special memory for me. And for the many who helped me organize tickets, the one who did my poster and my concert ticket design was Mrs. Cha Bagaipo. So I do want to say thank you to her for her expertise and her beautiful work. There's so many people I need to say thank you to. I do want to thank Gospel Light Baptist Church for the use of the 2 vehicles that brought people here along with my performers. I'm grateful, and I want to share a blessing that is connected with the concert. I had to submit paperwork to different government offices in order to do this concert. And 2 government offices, but the 2 that I had to submit to was the business permit, Blitza City Hall, and also the SCAP for the copyright royalties and things like that. Both of them gave this concert an exemption, so we did not have to pay any taxes. It was such a huge blessing to be able to receive that exemption. So I want to make sure that I share my gratitude or show my gratitude for that. My heart is full, and I would like to chat with some of you, so I'm going to stop talking. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I pray that it was a blessing saying, just a few short, words about me going back home to Mindanao. It's been a privilege to be here in Manila and to work in the capacity that I have been doing for almost 10 years. And I know that the Lord is moving me on to a different ministry. And I know that part of the reason why I'm sad is because I'm leaving a beautiful place, a beautiful work with people who are dear. But that doesn't mean that the Lord is not going to do anything more and beautiful in the next step for me. I know that He also has some beautiful plans for me, and I'm trusting Him with the next step in my life. So I want to thank you for being a part of this event. Your presence is a huge encouragement to me. So thank you. I hope you have a good evening. Students, hope study very well. Do well on your exams tomorrow. If we could have a quick picture with the performers before you all disperse. And then